We are live. All right. Back to back today. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I am thrilled to have Mark Brower, a personality on LinkedIn, a long distance trail runner, ultra runner, runs long places, long ways, and finds clarity out of it. There's been some good conversation about that on LinkedIn. A property manager out of Arizona area, single family operator around just under 600 homes. And I think a lot of things why I'm thrilled to have you on the show is a lot of things you talk about are innovative in terms of how we think about things, bring purpose to the conversation around property management, help people understand why they're doing the things that they're doing, get on earth, etc. I think you did have a post a few months ago around just like there's limited time on this earth, do good things, something along that lines. And I've made a point of following you and just keeping up with what you're saying, because it is so true. We have limited time on earth, do good things, and good things will happen. So pleased to introduce everyone to Mark Brower. And as always, guys, everyone listening, Getting to Hell Yes show is all about trying to figure out buyers and sellers and the psychology of buying, why people buy, why people choose the services that we're selling. And often they've prioritized a problem, or maybe they're frustrated with their current alternatives. So how do we find those buyers? How do we activate those buyers? And how do we begin to deliver them services so they become, evangelists for the work that we do? And that's kind of like, that's the trick. If we can keep solving that trick over and over again, we can grow and we can scale and we can create good businesses. This is brought to you by RCX. RCX is AI remote maintenance software and inspection software for property management. We help you speed up work orders, speed up inspections, speed up turns. And if you're listening to the show live, please, any comments you add are wonderful and appreciated. We can kind of go through them throughout the show. If you're catching it afterwards, any comments you add, both Mark and I will get notified, and we'll be able to jump on there. So without further ado, Mark Brower, a bit about yourself, your background, how did you get in this role? And then ultimately, what's the problem you're solving out there today?
Guillermo, thank you so much for inviting me on your podcast. It's a great pleasure to be here. So how I got in this role is I was losing money as a commercial real estate broker in 2008. And I had 3 kids, and I'm like, I'm got to get off this roller coaster, this feast famine commercial real estate. The markets are going to cycle. You're only as good as your last deal. Someday you hit the down button on the elevator, as one of my mentors told me, you walk away and you got nothing to show for it. So I wanted to build a legacy, and I wanted to do something that was recurring and that was more predictable, more stable. So I decided to very intentionally, I was going to start an insurance agency or a property management agency, and opted for property management. And so I became the de facto CEO of Mark Brower Properties. And I don't even know if it's appropriate to call yourself a CEO below a certain revenue, but that's how I got into my role. And it kind of morphed into what it is today, where I'm the visionary and I've got an exceptional team. And our purpose, maybe you're going to get to this, our purpose is helping good people do more good. And that's what we do. There we go.
Okay. So that's your purpose. Now, how do you channel your purpose into the problem?
Yeah. I think when I think about that question, I think about Steve Jobs. And I think somebody fact checked me on this. I think Steve Jobs once said, hey, people don't know what you want until you build it for them. And people don't know what they want until you build it for them. And we got to be careful, because, sometimes when you give engineers, unlimited resources, they'll just build stuff, right? Yeah. But the idea is, I think that a lot of people find themselves in a situation where they think they know what they want, but maybe they're not really clear what the highest purpose or the highest end of what they're really aiming at. And so actually, I think what people want when they come to us is they want the ability to make impact. They want the ability to do more good in their lives. And that's why they're coming to us with a rental property. Mm-hmm. And that if we can help good people stay in real estate for decades instead of a few frustrating years, that has that compounding effect of directing more resources, more wealth building, more impact potential into their hands. And at a micro level in their families and their schools and their churches and their communities, they can then use those additional resources and make tremendous impact. And that lights us up. That gets us excited.
Very cool. Okay. So that's a higher order than most conversations. And you're right. People aren't always just like out there seeking to solve for that. Like this, like it's almost like Maslow's like
Yeah.
hierarchy of needs, right?
Yes.
Food, food, clothing, shelter, and then like there's like 5 levels, and the last one is like clairvoyance. I don't know what it is.
Yeah,
But
no, it's actualization, self-actualization.
actualization, self-actualization. Thank you.
And the reason I think this is so important and so powerful is because when we can help raise the vision of our clients, they come to us and they think, I've got this problem.
Yeah.
And I want to say like, hey, we've got a tremendous opportunity and a mission. If we can get aligned and we can partner on a mission that matters a great deal, both to you and me, I want to help your family build generational wealth. And think of all the cool things that that could do. And when we enroll in a vision that's that aspirational, it makes everything else smaller when we encounter the challenges and the problems because we have something worthy that we're working towards.
Okay, so then how do you find those people?
Yeah, they just come along. I think one of the things that most of us fail to do is we fail to really understand and articulate our purpose. And I think if we can spend the time to understand and get clear and then be able to articulate our purpose, maybe even our philosophy, then the people that resonate with that purpose, maybe they didn't even know that that was their purpose, right? My buddy Pablo Gonzalez says, the best thing I can hope to do is join the conversation somebody's already having in their head. But most people I find are having a conversation in their head that's not very clear.
Sure.
And so if I can articulate a purpose that sort of galvanizes, good people with good values, like, yeah, I want to make an impact. And like, yeah, I've heard that real estate's the fastest wealth building, vehicle out there. And but I've also heard being a landlord's really tough. It's like, okay, well, here's a partnership where we can lower the stress for you to stay a landlord long enough to have that fighting chance. The reality is you're
Nope. Okay, we got a little bit of a network issue, I think.
Oh, we're back.
We're back. All right.
But if you can get, instead of like 3 to 5 frustrating years where the net impact to the owner is like maybe $30,000 to $50,000 in profit, because there's huge transaction fees in our business, right? To get out. If we can somehow establish a baseline of expectations, here's how your property will perform. We've really got this. You don't have to swoop in and micromanage. This doesn't have to be stressful. And they can let it ride for 20 years. I mean, that's powerful. It's the property is going to double in value in my market. The rents are going to double in value in 20 years. It's going to pay itself off if they're judicious about making extra payments. So the delta between 40,000 net benefit of the 3 to 5 years versus 800,000 benefit for 20 years is massive. And that's what we want to inspire people to do.
So then, I mean, these are, why do people choose other alternatives then? Like this is inspirational. It seems like this is a hell yeah, but people don't always choose. So why do they choose other things?
Yeah, one of the hardest things for us to overcome is the education piece and the actually being able to have the conversation. My experience with landlords, ma and pa. Now let's talk about the biggest segment of the market. It's ma and pa landlords, accidental ma and pa landlords. That's at least 60% of the people that hire us and that are shopping our services against our competitors. They don't have the experience. They don't have the context. They don't have the perspective around how to make the hiring decision for a property manager. And so what happens is effective property management companies promoting their services that understand buyer psychology appeal to the things that these buyers, these landlords have the highest degree of confidence in, which is price and guarantees. Right. And so what ends up happening is the low cost $89 flat fee operator in my market is signing 100 doors a month. True story. I'm not going to mention their name. 100 doors a month. And we're over here signing like 10. We want to get up to 20. We were at 20 all year in 2023, and that was great. We want to get back up there. And it's not an easy problem. It's not an easy question to answer. Why would people choose us? Why are they choosing other solutions?
Well, that lies into the hell yes side of things, right? Because I mean, you're a buyer too, right? Like the people that choose you, like if you're driven by price and you're attracted to an $89 a month offer, as an example, and you're not priced that, then if that's my most important priority, not wealth building, generational wealth, all those things, then that's not a good fit for you either.
No.
Right. And so if anything, they're taking that noise out of the market because those people need a place to go. They got to go somewhere. They may be in your pipeline today, but they want to grind you on price down to $90 because that's what they think it's worth. Or they're going to take up time and sales cycles that you could otherwise be spending with people who are going to buy your services for the fair exchange of value that you deliver.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like it sucks. It hurts when you see other people getting wins with their strategy. But to your how we open the conversation around vision, mission, vision, purpose, values, like what you're driving towards is a different outcome than they're driving for. And you also know that the $89 buyer can cost you way more than $89 a month. And so is acquisition really the game, or is it the correct, the right fit in acquisition, the actual game?
Yeah, there's something really interesting about this topic, like generally speaking, that like how do we craft, if we could intentionally handpick the clients we want to work with and be a buyer, to your point.
Yeah.
I should always, Dan Sullivan says, always be the
Dan
buyer.
Sullivan, always be the buyer. That's right.
Always be the buyer.
I didn't make that up. I stole that.
So I'm the one. So I'm the one when someone is attracted to my company or my values or my mission or whatever it is. First of all, I have to get clear about it. I have to communicate it effectively. I have to absolutely get obsessed about client experience. And we've actually fallen down on this recently in the last year or 2 years. We have not been on our game with experience. We're changing that now. I recently hired a COO. I'm super excited about the future.
Congratulations. It's hard to do.
Yeah. But if we, I just got excited about my COO and I forgot my train of thought.
We're talking about how Dan Sullivan creating a buyer, always be a buyer. And how do you craft that? How do you craft that? If you were to buy your customers,
yeah.
What would
So
that look like?
There you go. So the idea is average churn in our industry. Let's say it's 20%. That means the average property management
client churn, not revenue churn.
Yeah, client churn. Average client churn, let's say it's 20%. That means the client stays with you on average 5 years. That's how the math works. Okay. What if you could change client churn from 20% to 10%, or just 12%? I gave a presentation at the Strategic PM Summit back, I think in September. And I rolled out, I presented on an 883 framework. If we only signed 8 clients a month, which that sounds really achievable for most property managers, 8 clients a month that stay with us 8 years, that's a 12% churn. Best in class is under 10%. People like Mark Cunningham, they're doing under 10%. Sign 8 doors a month. They stay 8 years and they transact 3 times. The framework is 883, and they transact 3 times. Suddenly the lifetime profit, not lifetime value, the lifetime profit of that client relationship moves from $4,000 over a frustrating 5 years to over $30,000 per client. And I think it starts with vision. It starts with purpose. It starts with elevating our clients, like being selective about who comes into the company. Imagine that if you signed 8 clients a month that delivered $40,000 in lifetime profit to the business, and then you're running a 3.5 million EBITDA business, right? Because 8 times 30,000 is 24,000. So I did the math wrong. It's about a $3 million EBITDA business, and you don't even have 1,000 units. I mean, that's a phenomenal property management business. Yeah. And it's not that far-fetched.
But that's the whole nature of the hell yes conversation, is that understanding who is the best fit for the services you provide. And so the conversation, I mean, I always, and I'm not mathematical by in the spectrum of things, but when you're always talking about denominators, it's interesting to see how a denominator can amplify the results, right? Because the denominator has a larger impact on the result set than the numerator. And so if you take a look at, and if I've confused everyone, I apologize, but do 8 divided by 4 equals 2, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But like if you change the value of the numerator, particularly when it's decimal, you're able to really amplify the outcome. And so 20%, 0.2 has a negative impact on the result set versus 0.1, 0.5, whatever, and so like, or 0.8, 0.13. And so you take a look at whatever it takes to improve that multiplier on the bottom of the equation, you're going to end up with a bigger result set. People don't see that very often because they're obsessed with the numerator, which is
Yeah,
the price times quantity
exactly.
that I achieved this quarter or this month. But that's not how the money is made.
Yeah.
Like amplification, compounding, was it Charlie Munger, like the seventh wonder of the world is compound interest. Like
Yeah, for sure,
those
man.
sort of things are things that you really need to think about as you're building what's characteristically an LTV recurring business.
Yeah.
And so the models, the methods, the execution, the selection, thinking about how you're a buyer makes a big difference in your result set, especially when you're in a good, healthy market like Arizona.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Couldn't have said it better. Absolutely.
When you take a look at that, so it's funny about the taking it out of. So I actually, this is about 6 months ago. I was frustrated with conversations in the market, and I didn't say this didn't make a difference, but it helped me clarify my mind. I actually put an ad out in NARPM, in the forum in NARPM, about who we're looking for. If you are this, and you're suffering from that, this is what I'm looking for. And these are the qualification criteria.
Apply here.
We should talk. Apply here. Right?
Yes.
Pretty much. And it was funny because the comments I got, well, that was the weirdest thing I ever posted in NARPM. I got people saying you can't advertise. Well, it's not advertising. I'm looking for buyers, not actually advertising our services. And so it was like things like that were the kind of conversations. And the feedback was really interesting. But the moment of clarity came for me that it gives me a sense of who I'm looking for. It's like, well, I'd like to have invitation homes, but that's a big, complicated fish. I really don't want that buyer because the buyer I want is going to buy in the next 30 days. And what does that look like versus someone who's going to, go through a year or a year and a half of acquisition? And it's interesting when you think about hell yes concept is like someone who's you're going to meet them, talking what you do, and they're like, yes, I've been looking for that answer forever and ever and ever. Let's do this. And that's that filter of that audience and then what they're trying to solve for.
Yeah, I think a common mistake made in our industry and most of us are all small operators, so I was going to say by small operators, which is like 98% of us.
Yeah.
Is that we're saying the same damn thing. Like we're like I lease properties, I do all the stuff, like all the features and benefits, and I guarantee the tenant, and I do this, and it's like yawn, it's like most of us haven't spent the time to get clear about what makes us different. And then not only getting clear about that, but being able to articulate it and then being able to put that into material that in a very short amount of time, people can like either start resonating or not with it. And there's a misperception in property management that it's a commodity service business, that everybody does the same thing. You all say the same thing.
Right.
So I'm going to go to the perceived lowest cost operator, which by the way is a trap because usually the lowest cost operators have to backfill like crazy with fees on the residents.
Yeah.
And so there becomes a misalignment of incentives problem, which is, as old as time, the principal agent problem. But there's also this leverage, or there's these abuses where the property managers not only making a lot of money over here in ways that are adverse to the owner's best interests, but they're also gatekeeping information. So it's not transparent to the owner what's really going on. And the owner lacks the context, experience, and sophistication to really understand the incentive structures or really appreciate them in the first place. And so this just continuously happens in our industry. And I think it leads to higher churn, turnover, resident turnover. It results in higher maintenance costs. It results in lower tenant satisfaction. And we know from smart people like Ray Hespen that the speed at which you address maintenance, for instance, has a massive impact on renewal rates.
Yeah.
And so I look forward to the day, and I don't know how, this is not an easy problem to solve. I look forward to the day when we actually have the data that shows, hey, when we invest greater resources, not only in more fair offers to the resident, but really quality service to the resident, here's the direct bottom line impact to your cash flow and ROI as a landlord. And now we have some teeth in the story about what really differentiates us from the competitors. There's still people going to be just like lambs going to the $89 a month guy. But if they can really see like, oh, wow, you're not backdooring all these fees on residents, they're happier, they're staying longer. That's what I want. I'll play the long game with you.
Well, and I think it's interesting. I had this conversation at, a couple weeks back, talking about like unit economics of a property, right? So unit economics is not something everyone really thinks about from a PM perspective, but it's something that the investor or the owner thinks about. And so the unit economics being how much margin do I make on this property on a month by month basis? And if I have a churned out resident and it's cost me $4,500 for a make ready, well, then what's my payback on that, right? If you're like let's say $400,000, let's say what's the average rent? $2,000. With that, $2,000 average rent, and so let's say post property taxes, post everything like that, you might netting out like $1,200 a month. Is that fair?
Yeah. Right? With vacancy, repairs, taxes, insurance, all that stuff. Yep.
All that fun stuff, right? So you're netting out $1,200 a month, and then if you take a $4,500 make ready in there, like you don't make any money until like the fourth month. Like, have you thought about that? Like, if the resident just wants a new fridge, like get them a new fridge. Make that happen, because it's going to be so you're and especially that because that's an asset. But like you're so much further ahead of the game. And I feel like as a property manager or owner myself, like I didn't think about things that way, because like month to month I was cashing the checks and putting the money in my pocket.
That's it. And that this takes us back to vision. When we think short term in business and we think short term as a landlord, the reality is landlords are unwitting business owners. And most of them most of them have no business experience. And you know what? I'm going to zoom out a little bit more. There's this might sound weird. There is a leadership problem in landlording. I don't even know if that's a word. There is a lack of leadership in the landlord base of clients. And the reason this presents a problem, a number of reasons, because if you become a business owner and you don't think and act like a leader, things are going to be really frustrating and they're not going to go well. And so part of the tension that exists between a property manager and a landlord is because they don't understand and they're not clear with each other what their roles are. You are a business owner. I'm your business manager. This is a completely different conversation now. I don't do everything you say. You hired me as your business manager because I have a business model that works and 20 years experience. So I actually require, which you should be all too happy to give it to me, your support to defer to me as a subject matter expert. I also require that you are financially strong and you have the right mindset about investing back in, because how do non-leaders think? Non-leaders think of cost as money flowing out of my hands. A leader thinks of cost as opportunity cost. What if I don't make this investment? My long-term cost is going to be larger. How do non-leaders think? They think really short-term, today's cash flow. How do leaders think? They think like, hey, I want to maximize the next 36 months cash flow, and I'll make the right decisions to make that happen. So there's a total shift, right, that comes about when we start understanding our roles, getting clear about them, and having the right conversations. Now, a lot of owners can never turn that corner. That's why if we're going back to like talking about always be a buyer, my ideal client profile, they are already a leader. They already have turned the corner with their own entrepreneur business, and they've leveled up and they've understood. Here's another mindset with leaders, that I can empower somebody else to do a job 80% as well as I can do it, but I buy back my time and my energy, and that's a massive win for me. Dan
Martell, right? We have the same library, you and I. 80% of someone else doing the job is 100% better than me doing it. 100% of the time.
And this is where a lot of small proprietors get stuck, right? They think like, oh man, I don't have enough revenue. Like, first of all, they're not charging enough, and they're nervous about it, and they think they're drinking the Kool-Aid that they're just another commodity when they're not. So they don't spend the time to differentiate, really communicate effectively, and like get people to pay enough so there's enough of a margin. So what they do is they start growing a business, and then they hire the lowest cost like helpers around them, which actually just make things a lot harder. And so I remember where I was going with that.
We're talking about mindset. We're talking about cash versus opportunity cost.
Yeah.
And the mindset of actually surrounding yourself, I think you're going with this way, is like,
Yeah.
if you can position yourself with enough margin, so just getting deals, then
That's
you can
exactly
create.
okay. Yeah. We were talking about the 80%. So if
Yeah.
you can position yourself with enough margin, then and only then, and by the way, not raid the piggy bank like so many of us do. Man, I've been slogging away at this business for 8 years. I deserve a payday. We just, our living expenses go up. We don't leave enough in the business, and so then it's like we're stealing from the business the resources it needs. There's a whole bunch of things that happen, but eventually, if we can get to the point where the 80% of what we could have done as the founder, right? The 80% that our team can deliver is better than the 100% of all the other small operators around us. Now now that flywheel is turning. That's the goal.
Because so just I'll replay that. So if the 80% is better than the
100%.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah. If our 80% is better than the 100% of our competition.
Exactly.
Then we've got room.
We're really making progress. That should be the goal. Because
Right.
for the longest time, this is a limiting mindset that keeps a lot of property manager operators small, is like, nobody can do it like me. I can't find any employees that can do this like me. Well, they're not wrong. But what they're missing is it doesn't have to be done at your ultimate pinnacle capability. You don't have to do that. In fact, what you start doing is you adjust the promises you make and manage expectations to 80% of your potential, so that then your staff can do it and they clear the bar, and now you're building trust and you're leveling up.
What I find what's interesting is that when you go through the process of actually delegating, you find gaps in your process because you're taking the time to write it down. Like, that's another thing that Martel talks about, is that when you go through the effort of actually documenting what you're doing, you, for starters, realize you're doing way more work than you should be doing. And number two, you find the gaps in the process that you've just been doing subconsciously, right? And what that looks like is, it looks like 8 p.m. work, 9 p.m. work, 10 p.m. work, Sunday work, Saturday work, and you're just closing the gaps. And that's just you're not engineering a scalable business that way. You're engineering more work. And for somebody, this is, again, like I talked about this another show, like, as a guy who's a kind of a get shit done guy, that was really good for the first 15, 20 years of my career. But it started to have a marginally decreasing impact on my outcomes, because I can only work so hard and I'm not levering myself. And there's a period in your career where you should be thinking as an individual contributor, but ultimately, to get the leverage that you need personally, professionally, and wealth-wise, you've got to find a way to lever yourself up. And that comes from giving away control, gifting responsibility, gifting accountability, and then measuring, coaching.
Yeah, and it's terrifying. If you care about keeping your promises as much as any good person cares about that, like making the promise and then turning over the fulfillment to somebody else is man, it's really uncomfortable in the beginning.
This is also why you got to have the riverbanks, right? Like, a lake will just take over all the low points in an area, right? But riverbanks and the lake doesn't move very fast, but riverbanks will force flow and it will move faster. And there'll be some erosion on the inner banks. There'll be some collection on the outer banks, and erosion on the inner banks, collection of the inner banks. But that is how the natural flow of process will do. And if you don't have the riverbanks, you can't move fast. It just becomes a lake. And a lake isn't really where you want to go. The lake doesn't go anywhere. It stays put. And so, like, that kind of like putting those riverbanks in place where it is allowed to flow, not a direct line, not a hose, but a riverbank where it can do what it needs to do, but it's got direction to it. And then you get faster flow. You get all those things that we're seeking to deliver from a leadership perspective. But if you don't do that, you're just gonna have a big, huge pond that just gets stanky. And that's like not what we're here for. And so it's interesting to kind of like volley these back and forth in terms of like, I learned a lot about myself when I started delegating. Even the low effort work or work that I shouldn't be doing, that taught me a lot about myself as a leader and what I was doing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard. Yeah, it's hard to delegate. It's hard to put structures in place. It's hard to like measure everything. And you know what's harder than all that is actually getting honest with yourself about what you're good at and what you're not good at. because I think what a lot of sole proprietors do or small business owners do is they think I'm the one that got us here. I am capable of doing all the functions, and they don't get clear enough about the stuff they really are terrible at, and
Right.
specifically and intentionally hire for that. And then so they plateau and they get stuck, and it's frustrating,
Well, it's like what Sullivan talks about when you talk about visionaries and integrators, right? Find your integrator, right? So you can actually, the visionary can do the visionary work, and don't get out of your own way by delegating what's right to an integrator. And at the same time, Dan Sullivan talks a lot about the impact filter, but like the purpose of actually structuring your thoughts. So you're not just lobbing rocks over to your integrator so they can do what they want to do. My definition is steering. I say steering and horsepower. You can't win an F1 race without steering and horsepower. You got to have both. You got to use them both judiciously, because you can't slam on the brakes or slam on the gas when you're going into a corner, and you can't leave your wheels turn if you're going on a straightaway. So knowing when and how to apply those different functions and levers to be able to get to where you want to go, and like that kind of awareness, I think some people are gifted with it. Some people got to learn to make mistakes, but ultimately, the definition of what you're going to do and how you're going to do it helps you, and I'll bring this back to the LES conversation, helps you figure out who you sell to and why you serve them. Because like if you don't take the time to articulate those things, you can find yourself out of step with who you serve. And that can put you in a position where you're just trying to serve everybody, which is again, back to the start again of where just, I'm the only one that can do it because no one knows how to do it.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the impact filter? I don't think I'm familiar with that.
So impact filter is is a Sullivan thing. What it is it basically before you hand over an idea, or even before you even consider an idea, you spend 15 minutes, and Dan's got his public domain information, and you go through your brain. What's the project I'm working on? What is the circumstances for the project? Imagine what a real life with the end result looks like. And then you get into the two most important parts, at least that I think, is you talk about what's the best outcome if I make this decision, and what is the worst possible outcome if I don't make this decision. So it's not what's best and bad about this decision. It's like you're pairing it up against the status quo, and then you go and you match out with what you would expect to see from a quantitative outcome, KPIs, measures, whatever. And then you go and then what? But that process of actually documenting that helps relieve your mind of the chaotic hooks of all that data point that's sitting inside your head. And so I've even gone as far as creating a GPT with it, where I converse with it to make sure I'm not bullshitting myself, and it will smoke test my responses to make sure I'm not trying to lead my own decision making to a particular outcome.
Interesting.
And then what you do, and I've started doing this with vendors, actually, the vendors that we hire, is actually go through the impact filter, and I'll say, hey, this is why I hired you. Go do this, so that there's clarity around what my expectations are. And that's helpful, because when it comes down to managing your vendors, you can go 3 months and say, hey, this is what I said we were hiring you for, not what you sell. This is my problem that I need to solve. And how are we doing on these things?
Oh, I love that.
And if we're not doing on these things, then we're not really, maybe we have an icky relationship.
Well, to me, that ties back to this idea of what we try to do with clients is we try to get clear about a broader vision of where we're going and enrolling and aligning in that. And it sounds like that's what you're doing with vendors. It's like, this is not just a transactional relationship. Let's get clear about the impact that I want from this partnership.
Right.
And once we're aligned with that, and that word partnership is a loaded word, right? I think Dan Sullivan talks about, when you're in partnership, both sides give to each other generously, and they both experience a surplus. And that's a beautiful thing. But yeah, what a cool idea to tether, instead of tethering, am I getting what I'm paying for based on the service agreement? It's like, no, we actually had a conversation about impact overall, and let's keep coming back to that. That's great.
And it's helpful for just setting, to your point, if you can set expectations with people, they're either going to opt in or opt out. And they're going to opt in to meet the expectations, or they're going to opt out and say, this isn't me. And if they say this isn't me, you've done both sides a favor. because you've both agreed that this isn't the partnership that's going to achieve that surplus for both sides.
Totally. And then you can free up energy and time on both sides to go find, and there's an abundance of the right relationships out there. I love what Dan says. I'm not looking to work on relationships. I'm looking for relationships that work. There's another abstract idea that just came into my head as we're talking about this. And I hope I can get this right. When I was hiring my COO, a consultant told me, he said, I'm going to suggest, Mark, that your COO's primary metric is EBITDA. And I'm going to suggest that you, as the CEO, your primary metric is enterprise value.
Okay.
And I think about this, and I think that, which is the value my company would sell for. Now consider that. Let's apply that to the business manager, business owner, in other words, property manager, landlord relationship. Perhaps the team, the operations team, at the property management company is trying to deliver, or they should be trying to deliver, EBITDA. But there needs to be someone in the organization that dares to own the outcome of an impact greater than that, which is enterprise value. And that's when we talk about helping good people do more good. It's using real estate as a vehicle to build wealth, generational wealth. And that goes way beyond just EBITDA. It has to consider, is there latent equity sitting in this property doing nothing to bless this person's life? What is their timeline? What is their risk tolerance? What other opportunities exist in the market for repositioning the capital? And then we start thinking ourselves not as just a property manager dealing with sort of reactively dealing with day-to-day stuff, trying to deliver the best EBITDA. We're now thinking about engaging with a whole higher set of ideals and impact, where I now want to maximize the blessings to this person's life based on the capital that's invested in one or more assets. And that also includes repositioning over time.
Which is a leverage element to it, right? It's like return on capital employed or enterprise value, which is the gap between the market price and the return on capital employed. So you think about like the leverage, which is the beauty of real estate, is there's leverage to it. And so the leverage is a commodity, right? And so like the beauty of what is possible with real estate, which is why it's number one wealth generating choice you can make in your life, is that real estate has enterprise value elements to it that are controllable. Whereas in a lot of places it's out of control. So EBITDA, you're right. I mean, EBITDA to me feels like a CEO number, just given that it's like kind of like below I would say like EBITDA is below the interest, taxes, and an insurance line or DDA. But like all of that is something that is controllable. So almost like what's directly controllable this quarter and what is not directly controllable this quarter could be the accountability for the COO, because leveraging those assets is something that's going to be your job, because your job is going to be about the balance sheet, about the assets, about the liabilities, about what can I do there? How can I lever this all up? And ultimately, I think I tend to agree with that recommendation strictly as we're talking through it, and I can't find holes in it. And you do need to be the one that's principally thinking about EVA. It's an interesting way of looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
So has that changed your role definition for yourself?
I don't like having definitions and labels on myself, Guillermo.
Fair. But then, okay, let's talk about it's 2025. You got goals coming up here. So does it change your goals?
Absolutely. My COO and I just last week, was it last week or the week before? We had a very deliberate, intentional goal setting workshop together. And I'm super excited about, for the first time ever, I'm accepting the fact that I'm, forgive me for being self-effacing with this. I'm the crazy visionary guy. I bring the energy, I bring the vision, I bring the values. I won't compromise on our morals, on our standards, on who we are. I manage key relationships. I talk with you. I love doing this stuff. And now, for the first time ever, I have a really strong operator that's gonna take us through 3 stages. Stage 1, secure our current operations and double our growth rate.
Mhm.
Stage 2, reimagine property management, like we've
Mhm.
been talking about, way beyond the transaction and deep with additional value and offers, including repositioning capital, curating insurance products, and going really deep with the relationship, finding out what else the client needs and serving that. And then number 3, once we've done stages 1 and 2, partner with equity stake with strategic partners throughout the country and give them the model that we've refined and perfected with the
Mhm.
values that are so important, and expand our footprint through partnership.
That could be like, that sounds franchisey too, right?
It does sound franchisey, but I don't want to franchise at this point. I want to partner with people and be committed and take an equity position, not
Yeah.
just a franchise fee.
Yeah. I mean, you got 1 and 2 to get through first to figure out it's one of those things that you need to earn your right to that choice.
That's exactly right.
Right. I love it. I love the vision. That's pretty out. And then it's funny because you work backwards from that vision. And again, the Sullivan thing, and you work backwards from it, and the things that you do today start falling into place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Because if you choose not to do certain task or project, then you're opting out of the project that you want to achieve down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. The 10X opportunity is leveling up one entire level and saying, we're going to help people create property management businesses.
Yeah.
That's the 10X opportunity. But like, to your point, we have to earn that. And so that we're working really hard at that right now.
One of the I had a consulting company in the early 2010s. I had 3 partners, and we grew it really fast, and it grew faster than you could ever imagine. And the challenge that we ultimately exited. But what we didn't, I didn't really learn this until like probably 4 or 5 years later, in terms of the exit multiple that we achieved. It was kind of still felt opportunistic. Whereas had we had the IP in place, in terms of how to do this, not just it was a bit of like, well, how to do it and how to deliver this kind of work. We had that IP in place, we would have sold for more. But we didn't think about that end result until the opportunity came before us.
Wow.
We weren't building a company to sell. We were just running a company. And that's
the CEO's job, whether you ever sell or not. The CEO's job is enterprise value.
Yeah. Yeah. So now now with the COO in place, you can liberate your mind to think about ways to activate that and assign projects to achieve that EV outcome.
Yeah. And the first stage of that is like, I just like 100% of my effort is getting my CEO the resources she needs and removing roadblocks and giving her connections to people and, whatever I can do. And so that's the mode we're going to be in, heads down, for the next 3 to 6 months. And I'm really excited about it.
It is a fun position to be in when you can talk to your people and say, how are you blocked? How can I unblock you? And then it's clear about where they're going to go, because the language about being unblocked is about, I'm trying to get somewhere and I can't get there because I'm blocked because of resources, time, your approvals, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go, okay, well, I can get you unblocked. I'll make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then you're empowering your people to make recommendations around how to get to where you want to go, where we want to go,
Have you read any Cameron Herold, or you heard of Cameron Herold? He's like the COO whisperer. He has a book called Vivid Vision.
No.
So when we're talking about like years and end of year stuff, my buddy Peter Lohman is big on Vivid Vision as well. And I really like the reframe that Cameron Herold gives around vision. Some companies have this pithy, 2 or 3 sentence vision that falls woefully short of actually describing where things are going and what we stand for. Cameron Herold says you need to actually paint the whole picture, like over multiple pages, get really intentional, put context and color and shape to it and describe what it looks and feels like. And to me, and I did that process the first time 2 years ago. So we're two years into our 3-year Vivid Vision. And what I think is really beautiful, and what triggered me to say this, is what you just said. What you just said caused me to think of, once you have a really clear picture for the entire company to see, and your vendor partners and your clients, then people can pick pieces of it and enroll themselves with their own unique gifts and talents into different parts of that vision, without being assigned or told, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's a beautiful thing. And I think that's a really powerful part of, starting with the end in mind, like Stephen Covey would say, and
Mhm.
getting that really clear, big picture vision out there.
I think what's helpful about what you described though is that vivid vision. It gets down to even like the flavor of it. Like, what does that? What does that taste like? What does that
Mm.
smell like? What is that? Like being detailed around that orientation helps you, smoke test what your vision looks and feels like.
Mhm.
Like I remember reading Brian, the guy that did 1-800 Got Junk. He talks about how he literally drew it on a page and drew it out. I mean, now luckily you can do that with GPT, but you could actually go out there and draw it. And what does it look and feel like? I think I've heard of a couple people do that.
It's funny you would mention 1-800 Got Junk. Cameron Herold was the CEO that took that from a $5 million to, I believe, $120 million business. So they worked
Oh,
very closely
hilarious!
together. Yeah,
There you
that's it.
go. The loop is being closed.
Yep, that's it.
So when you talk about so this is an interesting one. So I had Jason. Do you know Jason Hall? He's in your neighborhood. He's
Uh-huh.
in Phoenix. So he talks about, and this is a really interesting concept that I love, is that if you share your vision, right, with the people that you're selling to, then he goes to the golden bridge where you share where you're going to go and kind of like almost ask them to opt in, like how you described. But
Mhm.
like doing it from a seller's perspective, even talking about like, this is what we do it. This is how I get paid. And this is why I do this to get paid. And then kind of like, are you in? And I like that idea because it also aligns with everyone's a buyer. Is that my time is precious too. And so I'm going to be bespoke about who I'm talking to and be transparent about what my objectives and motives are. And then you can choose that based on those circumstances to partner with me.
Mhm.
And I find it really interesting to kind of like think of things that way because it puts everybody on the same side of the table versus being on the other side of the table. And how that rolls around to getting to yes is that when you're on the same side of the table, it's way easier to sell rather than because you're helping them achieve their goals and you've laid out, here's the attributes of my participation.
Mm.
And that lends to a different conversation.
Absolutely. When I think of this, that type of conversation and getting to hell yes, and being really clear, what we're bringing and what that picture looks like of that relationship, that partnership, to me, and this idea of always being a buyer, to me, a really important piece of this is in one of the very first conversations we have with someone that we're considering partnering with, is we lay it out and we actually interview them to see
Mhm.
if they meet our criteria. We do it
Mhm.
respectfully,
Mhm.
but there's a definite psychological impact that I believe increases the perceived value in what I'm offering when I'm interviewing the other person and
Mhm.
making it clear that I have a buy box and
Right.
finding out if they're in that buy box.
Right. But the whole being ready for that interview forces you to put those questions down and figure out what your evaluation criteria is, which
Mhm.
then that's kind of like the wanted ad, right? Writing out who you want to work with, putting it on paper and creating an evaluation rubric is like a discipline that a lot of sellers don't do.
There's nothing that diminishes your value worse than being willing to work with anybody on pretty much any terms and match anything.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. It's true because it's going to exhaust you and it's going to suck energy out of the back end of you.
And people are savvy enough, especially if they have more money, if they have more, like my buddy Peter says, that they have more money or more properties than they can live in, which is a funny way of describing a landlord.
Yep.
Most of them know that something's fishy if you're just saying, yes, yes, I can do that. Yes, yes, yes. Whatever you want, I can do it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. So then when you're going in the market, you're trying to find the people that you guys specifically want to sell to, and you're trying to achieve your vision, doubling growth, all those things. Like there's kind of two customers that you're starting to shape there. There's the customer that you're starting to shape with respect to the equity investment and the stage 3. Then there's the customers that you got to sell to in the current year, in the near term. So how do you think about the evolution of that go to market?
Yeah, well, right now, I think that I'm just going to keep being really clear, even though it might be 1 to 3 years out before I partner with anybody and
Hmm.
build additional branches. I'm gonna get really clear and articulate that so that the people can be brought into my orbit, or I can be brought into their orbit if it's something that they're interested in. Look, there's a lot of really capable operators who are employees of fantastic companies in this industry
Hmm.
that could go out on their own and build their own property management business, and maybe have thought about it, maybe would love to do that. And if I can de-risk that for them and also accelerate it for them, I
Hmm.
want to start talking about that now. That's where I
Right.
want to be in 2 to 3 years.
Right.
But also, I've got to be, honest and know that I haven't built the machine and the model yet that I can really proudly say, hey, this is going to give you a really solid chance. I've been doing this for 15 years now, but now more than ever, we're going to really dial something in where we can hand it off and have it empower somebody else to move through those first few hundred doors under management more rapidly than I did when I was at that stage. And that's
Hmm.
how I'm going to bring that value.
Well, and when you do talk about it, you get a test drive the languages that are going to become receptive with that target audience,
Yeah.
right? When you say it out loud, you hear it twice, and you hear it maybe third, fourth time if you say it in a podcast. But ultimately, like that language starts to create the audience, the demand curve for that forward sale. So you can build your wait list. Your newsletter is your wait list, right?
Mhm.
All those things to start building that demand in the long run with the content that you create and the engagement that you're out there.
If
It's really
anybody
connected.
listening to this is a visionary, the thing I would say is um, all the time spent like Mark and Guillermo talking, like and doing a newsletter and posting on LinkedIn and having conversations and going to conference, and you hear yourself, like you're saying, you hear yourself saying the things over and over and over, and it's not unlike a stand-up comedian
Mhm.
that goes to all the small clubs
Yep.
when they're building a new set of
Yep.
material,
Yeah.
and it's 100% okay. We
Yeah.
don't have to arrive at every conversation and every conference pretending like we've got it all figured out. This is a work in process. My philosophy has developed so much over the last year, and it's because I've been willing to engage in podcast conversations. And
Hmm.
so I think it's a beautiful thing. And I think seeing it as a process and engaging in the process, I think gives us the permission to explore and experiment live in conversation and refine and refine and refine that down. And that's a really powerful thing over time, I think.
Well, and there's an element of humility to it, which makes you so much more approachable, right? Like if you say, first of all, to have the courage to have an opinion, which is I'm attracted to that, but then have the courage to also be humble about your opinion, where it may not be perfect. Hey, look, I'm working on this. This is not airtight. This is kind of I think about like outbound sales. Right? I coach entrepreneurs and founders. Your outbound sale um, is a hypothesis. It's a hunch. You need to follow a scientific method, and you need to follow that scientific method in such a way, no Amazon driver, that you actually can execute on that and learn from the dependent and independent variables. And so the thing you learn in grade 3 about I've got this idea that this might happen if I do these two things is basically sales. And it is idea generation. And the ability to test it. This is what I say, like I talk to entrepreneurs and say, like you have to go to conferences. Maybe if you can't afford it, go to the bar with a credit card and spend $200 buying drinks. Because you're going to have those conversations and that'll save you hours, weeks, months, years in what you think your version of the world is. Because I tell you something, no one's buying that. They're buying their version of the world. And that's what you just need to accommodate. And so that makes for a different like approach to things. Because ultimately we're servers. We don't dictate the outcome. We don't get a vote in our success.
Help me understand that.
I don't get to choose. I get to choose the things that I do. I get to choose that our company does. But ultimately, someone else, my customer, they have the vote. I don't. So I have the power of choice, but my choice is predicated on an outcome that someone else gets to evaluate.
To me, that's connected with an obsession around value creation. A couple of weeks ago, I did a post. My brother's an attorney in town, and he's like, "Hey, Mark, have you heard of this thing? Like some Gen Zers are saying, act your wage. I'm like, what is act your wage? It's like don't do more than what you're being paid for. Refuse to do it. Strike with your effort. Do not engage in that indentured servitude. Do not indulge in that abuse. Act your wage. And that's actually completely contrary to one of our core values as a company, which is contribution minded. And it's absolutely flies in the face of every success I've ever experienced.
Yeah.
I had to intentionally engage in creating more value without demanding to be paid up to every decimal of the value that I created right now, right? The people that are willing to create a surplus of value for a prolonged period of time are either going to get recruited away or they're going to get massive promotions that they're not even looking for.
The actor wage, I would say, is a reflection of the kind of like endemic depression that people have within their selves right now, because they're evaluating their outcome gap in the game. They're evaluating themselves from their people around them, not by their internal combustion engine. And so there's I was bugged my daughter. She's going away to university to a other side of the country that has a different perspective on things than I do. And I was like, if you come back and you say the word "I deserve," you're coming home, because you don't deserve anything, right? And I said, and this is just the training on abundant mentality versus abundant thinking versus scarce thinking. Act your wage is the definition of scarce thinking.
It is.
That is the pizza's only this big, and if I get a bigger piece of the pie, you get a smaller piece of the pie.
It's
just not a motivation.
It's so debilitating. It flies. It's like, it is so contrary. If any young person in their 20s is like sympathetic to act your wage, please do yourself a massive favor and get obsessed about creating the most value you possibly can. And then your life will be far more abundant than you could imagine otherwise.
Yeah. That is, I just, the allergic reaction that kind of conjures up, like the stomach acid that comes from that, is just like, that's the definition of everything that's wrong in the world today.
Yes.
So, but let's move on from that, because that's going to put me in a funk.
Yeah.
But when you think about, so wonderful conversation, we're kind of need to wrap it up. Probably could talk another 2 hours. We look back at the things that you've done and the advice that you've heard taken with both readers. What advice do you give to people that come to you, that are starting to you, your customers, your colleagues, your friends, your colleagues, whatever? What advice do you kind of stick with in terms of what you offer to people as a guiding principle? Advice to yourself as a younger Mark.
Well, we've talked about Dan Sullivan in this conversation, and there's a really impactful idea in the book, Who Not How. And the idea is, if you want to achieve something in your life, you can go the fast way or you can go the slow way. And the slow way is ask yourself, how do I do this? How do I do this? And learn by like Edison did, by inventing 10,000 light bulbs that didn't work, so you can be that guy or girl. Or you could take the shortcut, and the shortcut is to get super clear about what you're looking for. Really, really, really clear. Because nothing pisses off a really successful person more. Well, there's probably some things, but it ranks up there than to ask them something really vague. It's like, go away. Get really clear about exactly where you want to end up. And if you don't know, just decide anyway. Because God has a way of directing us, but we have to be the ones moving forward. So, and then find the person that already has that outcome, and do whatever you need to do to be around them as frequently as possible, or people like them. And by osmosis, it's not that they will give you the silver bullet to getting to the target, but you will start becoming the person who naturally intersects with that target.
Right.
Just because you've leveled up your character, because you were around the people that had that level of character. They were living at that wavelength.
Outstanding. It's that whole surround yourself with people, make yourself better. Right. But I like the nuance of the people that actually get you to the target that you want to go. Right. This is a wonderful conversation. Who should we talk to next? before I forget.
You should talk to Lior, CEO of Blanket Homes. Really
Blinken Homes.
Lior, Blanket.
Blanket. Okay, I might need an intro there. I haven't heard of Lior before.
Yep, Blanket is a software, fantastic software that helps actually do what we talked about earlier in this call, in this meeting, where it helps elevate the owner. It's a tool that elevates the owner's, the landlord's vision from accidental, like reluctant, pissed off transactional landlord to, wow, this is where it's going in 10 years. This is where it's going in 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's really powerful stuff. Lior, Blanket.
Lior, we were going to get a hold of you and have you on the show. Thank you very much today. This was like, we went this way and it was outstanding. It was outstanding. So we really appreciate your inputs.
Loved it.
And anyone who's catching this on LinkedIn afterwards, obviously jump in the comments and we'll get to them. And we'll get notifications to get to them. If you want to get a hold of Mark, LinkedIn, best way. Oh, just froze a little bit. Well, I think LinkedIn's the best way. And then ultimately, if you're listening to this on the podcast on Apple or Spotify, just like, follow, subscribe, download. It helps everyone find us a whole lot easier and move the search rankings. Mark is frozen with good timing here as we're closing it all out. And thank you everyone for listening today. I really appreciate you guys listening in. And Mark, thank you so much. Appreciate the conversation. Have a good day, everyone. Take care.